Aaron, how are you today?
Not too bad, you?
Nice to see you. Done work?
Yep.
Yay.
Yeah, you got a really cool shop here, but I see some of this, like, handmade artsy stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what's this all about?
Well, there's that's a story about the maker, the person who makes that. And we get that's, well, how do I start and how do I tell you what the stuff is? This is made by Gilbert Yeung, who's been in audio, is now, I think, some 53 years old and has done it since, oh God, 1990. This is the first amp, Aaron, that I ever bought. This is a Blue Circle amplifier. It's called the 002i. And to this date, at $8,000 retail dollars, it is the best amplifier I have ever heard. It has the best sound quality in line and output that I've ever witnessed. Now, why would I buy that? I could buy any of these things. This is my first system when I was a little boy. I was young, I ran Great West Audio, and I bought Name Audio from Julian Veriker and used to speak to him. He's a BBC engineer and made beautiful hi-fi. That's hi-fi we know. Name, have you heard of Name?
Yep.
Okay. So I bought that for some $2,100 in 1982. It was more money than my Honda car. And I loved it. And I found that it was very simple. It was based on abundance of energy, very, very straight line-to-line paths, and the least amount of parts possible, because each part, all it can do is damage. So I would search and search and search and not listen to salesmen. I would speak to people that made it and try to find out the truth of what's inside it, because I didn't have a lot of money and I wanted great audio. So I would go to the shows in Chicago for 20 years, over and over, see all the guys we knew. I mean, all the high-end guys we knew, Krell and Audio Research and Comrade Johnson and all the wonderful people that we knew as the leaders in hi-fi, the John Curls, the famous people. And I'd learn. So when I did that, I finally went to a Canadian show about 10 or 12 years ago when we had the turntable. Remember the turntable boom in 2005 we had? And what happened was people got their 70s uncles and dads stuff when they were getting to retirement or didn't want to use it anymore, and they got their old Thorntz table and their really heavy amplifiers they didn't understand from the 70s, and they listened to them and they went, why am I listening to my stupid phone? This sounds so good. And they were at the very beginning of what was great audio, somewhat affordable. But their uncles they didn't understand were paying $500 and $600 in the 70s for some of this gear, and they were making $3 an hour. So this was a lot of money to them. Today we're still buying $500 audio, and we think, oh, that's okay, it's a $500 receiver. But our cars are 50 grand, our houses are 400 grand. What are we thinking? So when I met and went to the Toronto show, I saw much of the same. Our names, our regas, all the people that we knew, Creeks and Moon, analysts from Outside Hi-Fi, we all know who they are. And there was this one person that I saw was in a fedora that was painted, a jacket that I can explain to you now that I'm wearing that Gilbert Yeung painted for me. And when he wore those things, everybody would look and talk about him like he was just an abstract, weird person. But I stood 20 feet away a decade or more ago and listened to him speak about hi-fi and what really mattered and the simplicity of audio, and I was drawn to him because he made common sense and he kept it simple, and he didn't conclude that there was any one thing you could do that made it perfect. When you did one thing well in an electrical circuit, you also removed something, and if you fixed that, you lost the other side. So if you got synchronicity, you maybe lost independence or shielding from side to side, or you know what I mean? You'd have one good, one bad. That to me sung true in the simplicity of gear of this thing. I mean, this thing has a volume control that's worth, just the parts, $300 US. That's a Shalco volume control. Takes about a day's labor just to put that together. But the coins from point to point, this is a point-to-point volume control. It's a stepped volume control. But its connections are wonderful. When you have this, it's perfection in volume controls. This should last hundreds of years. And it's a wonderful sounding thing. So later on I got a product in from the USA, and it was better at $1,000 than anything I'd ever had. It was a digital analog converter from Blue Circle audio, and it beat a $10,000 Brinkman that I had. I had the Name audio ones. I had several from Cambridge Audio, several from Name. All good, all touted as some of the best reviewed product there is. This destroyed all of them at 1/10 the price. So I opened it up and looked inside, and then let me show you a piece of Angela-Gilbert Yeung gear. There's one on the floor here. So this is just a capacitor-based upgrade for an amplifier. And I saw that each capacitor was put point by point by hand. No circuit boards, lightning fast. Used silicone in it. I said, well, why would we use some ugly looking goop? Well, this is 40 durometer. Do you realize that everything in audio shakes? Well, it doesn't shake very much when we do this. People spend thousands on stands like this to hold the steel. Why wouldn't we hold the source component? So I saw the genius in this, and I also saw that obviously is made by one pair of hands. A highly skilled expert, the expert, makes this him or herself with no help. No training people that don't care. No people that are going to miss something. In other words, for its parts, essentially perfect. I was all about that because in my store, if you want in my store, at any price, if it's a $1,000 speaker, $1,000 amp, it's very simple. Just beat what I have because my job is to protect you. I don't care about me. I don't care about the supplier. I care about my value towards you so that you always use me for my skills. So when I saw this component and I opened up that DAC, the digital analog converter, was similar to this with a DAC board in it. And when I did it, I said, oh, well, I called Gilbert at Blue Circle Audio, and I said, and he's Asian, Chinese from Hong Kong, came here in 1986, I believe, roughly, with his family. Was a good soldering start at 10 and 11 years old. Began making components at 19 and now 53, and I went, that's an amazing run. Comes from a father that's engineering quality mind and came over here and trained him, and all he wanted to do was make audio. Not make electronics, not audio, only. I said, well, how'd you do that? Well, I was taking piano lessons. She would say, and I'd skip them. And I'd go listen to hi-fi at the hi-fi shop, jazz and whatever else, and loved music. And was absolutely awestruck that a piece of electronics could make those sounds like live music could. So that was the motivation. And then the artist inside, an artist will see things differently than a regular person will. They don't have boundaries. And when they make audio, they don't just look for a math equation. They don't just look for a resolution based on paper, a specification. They realize that when you win one, you lose one. They realize that is burn yourself in electrical, and that squeezing in a lot of contact is kill yourself. They understand induction and contact. They understand how to vector, or when you make a joint, did you make a fuse where all the hard particles of your solder joint drip down and went over, down, collected, came back up, went over? Or did you make it in a ball right where it needs to be and have it like the two fingers touching, go straight through? It's called vectoring. It's from Alps Corporation, 1914. Getting the basics right and using the least amount of parts is intriguing because it's real and it works, and any sock-eared fool can hear it. But the fact is, nobody's handmade anything from scratch since the 20s. If they did, they'd do it in the garage for a couple of times. So Angela-Gilbert Yeung, I call, we don't want no Diras. That's what I get, and then hang up. And then I get it again 6 months later. Please, we don't want no Diras. I was like, oh, what do I do now? And the friend from Royal Oak that brought me the DAC, his brother lives close by me here in the small town Chatham. He lives in Mitchell's Bay. And he had bought a turntable like this, a German turntable. Beautiful $12,000 turntable, which should be 40 or 50 from the companies with name brands. So it's value. I search for value in every product I buy. And he said, well, I want that to turn better. And I said, well, 10,000 hertz in a turntable groove is 1/1000th of a millimeter long. We've got the greatest arms in the world, the greatest bearings from GRH. They're honed in, milled in vacuums, and we're trying to pick up this groove, and we got everything frozen, and it's wonderfully tuned with the tone arm, the arm itself. The cartridge is trying to ring. Problem is, we're not turning accurately enough. So I said, you got to have somebody that can get that 5-stack 24-pole motor and make it better. He said, well, I know Gilbert Yeung. I said, well, great. I said, I've tried to call because I know how good that stuff is. I said, if you have that facility to have that contact, go ahead and make the connection. So he did. About 3 months later, this is a year's gone by since I made those 2 phone calls where we don't want no deers. And it was funny. I was laughing. I'm not belittling the Chinglish accent, but Gilbert actually uses it as humor, and I think it's hilarious. We just love the death out of each other and celebrate each other's differences as we go through all the things that we do. He makes fun of me, my white normal North Americanness, and all the things I miss, and the things that I don't leave ergonomically perfect. Anyway, those 3 months go by, and I get there, and actually Gilbert's at Victor's home. And he's standing in the audio room away from me with the fedora on, the painted jacket, just like this, looking like $1 million, like a peacock. Gets the turntable going, and I measure it, and it drops in wound flutter 400%. There's a $2,100 power supply that's ultra linear, made in stainless steel. I couldn't believe that he did it for this. We get it all done. He drilled into the 5-stack motor, reset the bearings, made sure the bushings were getting 100 times the original energy with tons and tons of current. And it became like a 24 pole is like 24 bushings inside of a motor ratchet. And it's ratcheting like this. So it's like Clydesdale's trying to pull this turntable so it won't slow down. Because the turntable's wound flutter is. The turntable just wants to slow down once you get it going. It's, oh, okay, I'm tired. So this ratcheting effect keeps that 33 1/3 very even, and it opens up a turntable so it rings. When he did that, he'd introduced 3 connections to the motor instead of the 2. It had a DC motor and had a plug with 2 connections. Well, now it had 3 with a ground. We're out in Sandy Loam in Mitchell's Bay, and we can hear a hum on this speaker that the gentleman I was with, the customer, said, "Mike, can you hear that?" And I blew over, bzzz, so I can hear bzzz out of one speaker, but only about 2 inches away. And it's not going up and down with the volume. And he says, "What is that?" I said, "Well, it's 60 hertz cycle. I can hear buzz. I know what it is. It's hydro." And I said, "You're in Sandy Loam. You're in water." So I said, "You got to have an 8-foot piece of copper on the ground, and then 30 feet away make another one, make a triangle, connect it to your panel box." And none of that was done because this is a filled area and you're on water, and that will create ground through the wet soil and the panel box itself, and that noise will go away. So I walked in the other room and I took out a power cord that Gilbert had in boxes, which is a ground and 2 prongs, and I snapped the ground off. I didn't tell anybody. I walked back in with it. And Gilbert goes, "Oh, you mean frote the ground?" I said, "Yeah, I frote it." And I'm kind of making fun of his accent, which was endearing to him. And he goes, "How you know?" And I said, "I told you I've been doing this since 1978 every day. I cut off my arm to have good sound because I can't reach in my wallet to get it. This is what I wanted, just like you." So my job was to make people happy, make them cry about music, all that same stuff. And I think that he knew it. So I turned to him and he said, "I brought power line conditioners for you." And I went, okay. I said, "They're for me to try at the store?" "Yeah." He didn't announce any of this in previous. And I said, "Well, I thought you didn't want no DRS." "That's what you told me." And he said, "I had to see if you're an asshole, an ass. I wanted to see your character." And I thought, ooh, that's a pretty good maneuver and a pretty good check. Had I been, I'm absolute sound, I've been at it for 43 years, I'm really important. He wanted no part of that. It's not about making money. It's about getting the job done correctly, in the most beautiful fashion, running up the hill, pushing the bleeding edge envelope of all audio, and going like this, like a 10-year-old when I get to the top of the hill, and then for 3 seconds after that, looking for the next hill. Absolutely no pride, Daddy and Gilbert. So we would go through, and COVID came around after we had about 3 years together, and we had a time at which I think Gilbert Yeung was so exhausted with audio and answering questions where the industry for 50 years had trained people to look at like Bryston or anybody. That's good product, but what they would do is they would have you look at big stainless steel brush fronts, lots of lights. They spend more money on the handles than we do on the entire components. And so your eyeballs could see nice audio, and it just didn't make any sense. That looks like it'll sound good. That doesn't mean anything. But that's what the industry offered us. And it was about them making a lot of profit, employing 60 or 100 people, and pushing out a few thousand of each product that they made to try and make money. It was money motivated. It wasn't just music motivated like it was. It seemed pure in the 60s and 70s because although they wanted to make money, their best foot forward was, let's do something nobody else can do. Let's do something better. And music right then was, there was a huge musical revolution in the 60s and 70s. Woodstock, the women's movement, equal rights, and the young people sang like they were going to die. And that great art, and it came from churches and all of the wonderful training that the young artists had, came out in music, and that was part of the thing that motivated BBC engineers, German engineers, the European people, and the North American high-end audiophile people to make better gear than was ever available before. So the music kind of moved the needle for them to perform. And then it became business. They wanted to make money. And these guys walked away. You know, the guys in the 60s, they were 60s or 70 years old, and they were the leading guys with a lot of wisdom and experience. And they made stuff in the 70s and 80s, and then they simply passed away or quit. So, with these power line conditioners, when they came in the simplest way I can show you, and I showed you, come on over here and I want to show you something. And all this is the very first thing that I tried. And I tried it in the form of these pucks. This is a Blue Circle power line conditioner. At the time I sold this thing, this was $99 US, 150 Canadian. This is medical grade components in a plug and a duplex here that you can plug 2 pieces of gear in. And this simply removes all the noise that's not 60 hertz, because a transformer, although it filters some, will just repeat the noise that comes from the wall. So if we don't start from the wall and have clean power, all of this in here, all these parts, any of the buzz and ring passing this, gets in here and makes a noise floor in here inside this steel and buzzes as well. So this old sniffer from Radio Shack is right here. That's all the noise in my line. And I hardly have neighbors here. And that's points of... There's high frequency and low frequency that speaker can't even play that's in there also. We can't even hear it. So Gilbert gives me these pucks, and we plug them in. And I've seen for like $5,000 or $10,000 that regenerators will do all kinds of neat stuff that'll clean up power and make amplifiers great. But that's like 10 times the price of a $500 Cambridge. That's silly. Who's going to buy that? But for $150... I plug into this one, which is the first one he gave me. It's large size, and look, that's live hydro. No noise. I'm not talking zero noise. Ear right to it. You can't hear a thing. Well, that's going to give the chance for this transformer to be far more efficient, don't growl, and a small amplifier like this or this at $500. These are $500 machines. They'll beat the exact same company's $1,000 machine or $1,200 machine for $99. So why would I take a young person like yourself and allow you to buy a $1,500, $2,000 amp when I can beat it with a $500 amp with this? Which is one of the stupidest business plans you could ever have, because I make 20 bucks. But am I doing the right thing for you?
Right.
That's the way that I've built my business. And that's the way and motivation I've done with every line stage and every single thing that Gilbert and Angela Yeung have ever made. When I was at the factory during COVID, after I do this thing and we start to create a bit of a rapport in business. You remember when I said we were down there, we did power conditioners first. I started to do phono stages that Gilbert made. And then COVID came along in 2019. And I said, I'm coming to the factory, which I got, no one comes to the factory. I said, I don't care, I'm coming. I'm going to be there tomorrow. I saw and witnessed one of the greatest living people living without lying to themselves, living perfectly ergonomically without waste, didn't have children, didn't go on trips, didn't throw away anything. And I went, oh boy, is that the person that I want working for me or with me or on behalf of my customers? Then I saw the inside, the layout of the most smartly laid out factory with 20 or 30 things that were like this to be produced in one day by one set of hands in boxes and then ready to go. It's jaw-dropping. I started to just watch and learn as much as I could. We would talk around the factory, and you know what? We became extremely close. And I noticed when this fedora jacketed person was in their normal clothes and they walked around and moved I was moving things around and they move and their hips would move, and it was very gentle. All those strong hands, like the best strength hands you could have. Also the delicacy of a woman, and moved like a girl And about 3 weeks into trips and trips and trips, because I'm there all the time, my store is closed. I said, Gilbert, you're a woman. She turned and said, yeah, you see her? I said, yeah, I can see her. Who is she? She says, well, some of my first piece was an AG 1000 or 1200 amplifier. And I said, what's that? And she said, Angela-Gilbert. I said, oh. I said, are you gay, trans? I had to label it. I didn't know, right? So when I looked at it, she said, I'm neither of those things. Sexuality isn't an interest of mine on either behalf and never has been. I went, oh, okay. And I said, you guys don't seem to fight to get out or different. I see both of you all the time, like a female persona and a male. And I said, we just talked to each other and we figured, well, you've got a dual personality. And they're always both there. And they're wonderful. And I said, well, in this day and age, why isn't... I said, Angela's the beauty and the way you see and do these things. Gilbert is the engineering, analytical, and accurate mind and installer and layouter, person that knows how to organize the components in a fashion that's going to work in the electrical path. And then the beauty artist mind says, I gain and I lose, and this is the way to get the soup to go to the end I want. You have to have vision to do that, and you have to think outside the box. When that was done, I said, why doesn't she run the company with us? Then we met other friends, people that we had contacts with that were through the media, and we made a movie. Like over here, you see more of the jackets and shoes. These are Angela's shoes. They're exquisite and wonderful, and they just dropped one on the floor. That's like Gianni Versace would be envious. They are gorgeous in every way, delicate, and every single stroke means something and says something, as well as the purses, the jackets, the wonderful jacket that I'm wearing. When I put it on, I feel better than when I don't. I feel more creative. I'm inspired, as I think she was. So when I embraced Angela inside Gilbert, what happened was her art, her audio was free to run rampant and reach farther bleeding edges than ever before. Blue Circle was great, conformed to some reviews. No one made anything like it because no one had two perfect hands making it and a perfect mind for comparison's sake. There is no perfect. When that happened and Angela went, the product raced. We became more affordable, higher end and better. We had starting components at $3,000 and $4,000. Now we have funkies and little amplifiers that are made of refuse components with brand new pieces in them that are extra, starting at $1,500 Canadian, that will outperform $10,000 integrateds from any name brand company you bring. And we make Powerline conditioners affordably, little parts, no baloney. And I think a lot of the reason that we came to be such great partners, friends, and admirers of each other is we were similar. I have a store here with $12,000 overhead for the year. I don't have to hurt anyone. I don't have to pull so much money selling you wires you don't need and all kinds of box moving that you don't need because I want you to keep me alive. This is like an 80s store still. I mean, it's not that pretty and it's very simple and small, but it covers all the bases and the essentials. And at each price point, we'll either make that $1,500. If we go underneath that, we go to something like that that's $499 with a $300 mod. That's an AS301 from Yamaha Electronics, and it's brand new. And I give people very simple things, and I'll do this for you, Aaron. You can take home a regular AS301 or one with this badge that says Super Cap by Gilbert Yeung. And you will find out that the AS301 regular sounds broken compared to this one. This sounds like one of Gilbert's pieces because it had the right bones. They don't have the time to stop and do things by hand with 30 kids and 500,000 units. That's how we get beginners an $800 piece that's amazing. And we do it over and over, and you can step up each time. They trade in for full value within 3 to 4 years of the time you have it. So in the upgrade path, there's no loss. And it's so inspiring that the people that we met that were friends, Gilbert and Angela Yeung, we made a movie. And it was a documentary. I simply talked to a friend that was in Sarnia, and I said, you know what, let's take out our phones and do a YouTube video of Angela-Gilbert Yeung. You got to meet. So I sent him down, he took this picture, this image, and I said, Joel, it's Joel Pilo that did it. And I said, Joel, That looks like a Getty image. Isn't that a beautiful picture, Aaron?
That's my favorite picture.
It is one of my favorites too, the concentration, and that's Gilbert before Angela. This is in the days just before she came out to, not come out, but to be in the presence of all of us and be inspired to use herself openly for a creative drive. And that really changed everything that we do. From there, this Joel Pilo said, well, Mike, I went to Fanshawe College with a director that's in Prime Video working in Vancouver, and his name is Alex Lutz, Alex Cosmo Lutz. And Alex was into his in your 30s, he's doing directing, making films himself, and they're documentaries. He was looking for a subject for his third documentary. And I said, you know what, Joel, if you can have that happen, he said, well, he's coming home to visit his parents in London, Fanshawe, we'll get together and do this. Well, he met Angela at the factory in, where she lives. And he called me 2 days later and said, Michael, that is the most inspirational and best subject you ever could have handed me. My God is proud to see a Canadian like that. What a story. Just about the person, the girl, the man. I want to convey that to the public. I said, absolutely, Alex. I said, we can't pay a lot. We just want to help. So we had to pay for a little bit of the score and the arrangement for the music for his other friends that were going to help chime in on the project. And he was an official selection nomination for the short film best documentary in Canada. And in 2022, that's a great accomplishment for him and a feather in his cap. And it shows 14 minutes of you getting to see Angela. And that's who's behind who's going to make either what you have or shape an industry piece that you would want so that you have tears in your eyes when you listen to music and don't just listen to music. You don't just turn it on, it sounds like any other stereo, which they all do. I don't care what you spend. Some are louder, some are quieter. To really be drawn into the music, and it's pure, we can have it on here, have a conversation, we can hear each other while the music's playing. That's pure sonics that are enjoyment in the room, and you won't turn it off and go do something else. So I'm happy. Every day I come in here, it's like coming into a little race factory for race cars and making the greatest effort I can to get the people forward. It won't last for a long time. There's only one set of these beautiful hands making all our gear, and if you're lucky enough to have it, consider yourself blessed. You're going to be happy, and you'll never get rid of it, and you'll really love what you have. And it's real music. As you know, you've heard it in here before. That's why you're back. So I'll give you the tools. You take them home. It's not about moving you something. Take them home over the weekend. Come and try them. That's what we do here so that you can test and hear yourself. It takes some time getting used to audio that's truly different than others. You hear it the first time, you're like, wow, I got to listen to this for a while. And then when you remove it, you realize how beautiful what you had was. And that's kind of the story of how we got together, Angela-Gilbert Yeung, and we're going forward with no walls. And I got a couple of nice jackets, which I'm very, very pleased to wear all the time. Love looking at them. So thanks for coming in, and we'll take a couple pieces home and see what you think of them.